Good morning, everyone. We are coming to you live via Facebook streaming, via YouTube streaming, and also via Skype online. Each one of you is welcome to this first live streaming of the year 2020, beginning of a new decade, going within. Everything dissolves into nothingness. Everything dissolves into nothingness. There is a question. There are three questions. I would take those three questions first and then go into the main talk. If first question, if God exists, how can one prove the presence of God? Number two, what does God eat? And what does God do? How can one prove the presence of God? God is the creator, and then there is creation. In the beginning, the creator and the creation are separate. The process entails, and you come to know that creator is creativity, or creativity is the creator. You know, there is milk, there is butter, there is clarified butter. These are all the products of the milk. If you take milk in a cup, dip your finger into it, you will not get the greasiness of butter or clarified butter. Both butter and clarified butter are embedded into the milk. There is a process of extracting butter or clarified butter from the milk. What is the process? The process entails that you boil the milk, make yogurt out of it. First stage, take the milk, boil it. Then you make yogurt out of it. You churn the yogurt. Butter will come onto the surface. You extract the butter and then heat the butter to obtain clarified butter. Milk is the beginning and clarified butter is the final stage of the milk. In order to extract clarified butter, the milk has to go through a process. If you want to prove or know the presence of God, in the same way you have to go through the process of austerity, meditation, prayers, then slowly and slowly all that is superficial starts disappearing, just as when you convert the milk into yogurt into butter, you had to go through a process. In the same way, as an individual, you have to go through the process until you attain to inner serenity, oneness, ego vanishes, there is nothingness within, no impulses, no fear, nothing. Then you are that which is, and your presence will reflect the godliness. This is the only way to know the presence of God as godliness within you. The second question, what does God eat? When an individual is full of ego, ignorance, the food, the nourishment for God is your ego. He destroys your ego. How? He eats it. He consumes your ego and all that is negative in you and leaves you overflowing positive. What does he do? With a wave of the stick, he can make the poor rich, rich poor. Things happen in such a moment. Someone is very rich, all of a sudden his riches are gone and he has become bankrupt. Miraculously things happen. This is what he does. Now coming back, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no impulses. And when there is nobody inside, how can there be any impulse arising? How can any desire arise? Nor consciousness. When there is no content, there can be no object. And with object, subject also disappears, because object, subject, and that which happens between the two is the Trinity. No eyes, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. No organs of perception. Buddha says, everything disappears into nothingness. Everything disappears into nothingness, Sariputra. And now you can understand, Sariputra, therefore I am saying it. You have seen it. You have looked into me. You have been on the very verge of it. You have peeped into the abyss, the eternal, the abysmal depth. No form, sound, smell, taste, touchables, no object of the mind, no sight, no organs, and so on and so forth. When you are in that state, you cannot even say that I am in the state of nothingness, because there is no one to say anything. Because if you say, that means you have to come back. If you say that I have experienced nothingness, that means you have to come back to the world of forms. So, at the most, Buddha can give a tender smile when you ask a question. When there is no one to say anything, how can you say that you have experienced nothingness? That means you have to come back to the world of forms. The mind that has started functioning again. And in that moment, you are not separate. In that moment, you are not separate from nothingness. So how can you say that I have experienced nothing? I have experienced nothingness. The words disappear, the mind disappears, there is no one to say anything. The house is empty. Nothingness is not like an object. It is not separate from you. You are not separate from it. You are nothingness. Creator is creativity. Creator and the creativity are not separate from one another. Creator and creation are not separate from one another. The observer is the observed there, and the object is subject there. The duality between the object and subject disappears. There is no ignorance, Buddha says. There is no knowledge either. When there is ignorance is not there. How can there be knowledge then? Because ignorance can only be when you think in terms of knowledge. It is the comparison with knowledge. How do you know ignorance? In comparison with knowledge. When you can tell a man ignorant, what do you mean? You are comparing him with something or somebody who is knowledgeable, who is not ignorant. But there is no knowledge, so there can be no ignorance. Ignorance and knowledge are the two sides of the same coin. Head and tail stay together. If head is not there, how can there be tail? There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance. And Buddha says, remember, I am not saying that ignorance disappears. Ignorance has never been there. Darkness has never been there. It is absence of light. It was the shadow of knowledge. It was the shadow of the mind, shadow of the mind addicted to knowledge. When you bring light into the dark room, what do you say? That darkness disappears, goes out of the room, escapes from the room, runs away. No, you cannot say that, because darkness in the first place did not exist. how can it go out? Light comes in. If you want to discover something, you bring the light and you search the book or something else that you are looking for. But darkness is not, if the book is not there, whether you bring light or not, it cannot be discovered. Because darkness does not exist in the first place, how can it go out? Light comes in, darkness is not found. Just as when you are searching for something, you bring the light and you do not find because it is not there. So there is no ignorance and no extinction of ignorance. When there is no ignorance, how can ignorance go out? How can there be extinction of ignorance? There is no knowledge and there is no absence of knowledge. One simply, and that is the meaning of innocence. That is innocence. One simply is innocent of all knowledge, ignorance, just innocent, virgin. To be free of knowledge and free of ignorance means virginity. To be pure, there is no decay and no death. Because there is nobody to die, and remember there is no extinction of decay and death. And Buddha is not saying that this death disappears, because death has never been there in the first place. To say that death had disappeared, again it is wrong, because Buddha is very, very assertive, perfect in his assertion. He is very careful. He does not utter a single word which can be refuted by anybody who knows the reality. He has not compromised. He has not compromised with the listener. There is no suffering. Now he comes to the ultimate revolutionary statement. You must have heard the four notable truths of Buddha. First noble truth is suffering, that everyone is suffering, that whole existence is dukh, suffering, pain, misery or agony. And the second truth is its origination. Where does this suffering originate from? From craving, desire. Tanha means loneliness. Suffering exists. The first truth. The second noble truth is suffering has a cause, and the cause of the suffering is desire. We suffer because we desire. And the third truth is this desiring can be stopped. It is possible. It can be stopped by looking deep into desiring. When you look deep into it, desiring disappears. And when desiring stops, suffering too disappears. And the fourth noble truth is there is an eightfold path, and that leads to stoppage and disappearance of suffering. This is the fundamental way of Buddhism. And in this statement, Buddha denies that too, and says there is no suffering, no origination, no stopping, no path. Nobody has ever stated such a revolutionary thing. Buddha reaches the uttermost peak of revolution. Everything else falls short. And the scholars find it contradictory. Buddha teaches that there is suffering, and then he says there is no suffering. He teaches that there is the cause of suffering, and then he says there is no origination. He teaches that there is a possibility that it can be stopped. And then one day he says there is no stopping. Buddha is not a philosopher, only philosophers can be consistent in their statement. One who knows the truth, he cannot be consistent in his statement. You come home and you tell someone that you are very thirsty. The person goes to fetch the water, and the person is taking some time to get the water for you. In the meantime, you go yourself and fetch the water and drink it. The person brings back the water and says, I have brought the water, and you say that I am not thirsty. The person finds your statement contradictory. One moment before you were thirsty and you were dying of thirst, and now you say that you are not thirsty. Because in between something has happened. There is no stopping, and he says, and the whole of Buddhism depends on that saying, that there is an eightfold path, ashtanga, right vision, right exercise, right meditation, right samadhi, so on and so forth. And the 8 limited paths which lead you to the ultimate truth. Now, one day he says there is no path. The reality is pathless. The reality is pathless. Then why is this contradiction? The first statement is made to those who do not know that they are not. There is emptiness. In that state, when the person was thirsty, the statement was that I am thirsty. Now he is no more thirsty, so a statement changes. The first statement is made to the ordinary people who are full of ego. This statement is made to Sariputra in a particular space, in a particular state. Therefore he says, listen to me, O Sariputra. Now I can say to you that which I could have not said before. Then you were not ready. Now you are ready. I can speak to you. You have looked into me. Looking into me, you have seen what nothingness is. You had a taste of it. Therefore, Sariputra, now it is possible to say that there is no suffering. When Buddha started the Heart Sutra, Sariputra was in a different state. As the association continues, the inner state of Sariputra keeps on changing slowly and slowly. Now he has reached to the point that he can understand what Buddha means, what Buddha really wants to communicate to him. But he has to go through in a systematic manner. Now it is possible to say that there is no suffering, that suffering is dream. People are suffering in dreams and there is no cause for it. People are desiring in dreams and there is no stopping. People are exercising, doing methods, meditating, yoga, etc., etc. This is all dream. And the whole path exists in dream. Now it can be said to you, because you are awake, Sariputra, your eyes are open. Now you can see ego does not exist. And to get out of the ego is to, how can you get out of ego? To get out of this sleep. To get out of this darkness. And to get out of the ego is to be free. In that freedom it can be said, there is no path, there is no dream. Only this much for this morning. Until tomorrow, take care and do have a pleasant day.